The Dragon Quest series has always been one of the best JRPG franchises around, and unlike the Final Fantasy series, it's been pretty much stuck to the same JRPG style it's been known for. The series has always had a strong connection to Nintendo consoles, even if some of the later titles was PlayStation consoles only, but they did later arrive for the 3DS in some wonderful ports. The series did dabble with the MMO genre for Dragon Quest X, but the title never saw release out of Japan. Anyway, Dragon Quest is making a comeback to Nintendo platforms in a big way with Dragon Quest XI for the Switch, so let's see how they did, shall we? Dragon Quest XI was the first ever game announced for the Switch back when the console was just simply known as the NX. At launch of the game, it was originally released on the PS4 and the 3DS a couple of years ago in Japan, and unfortunately the 3DS version never made it out of the country, mainly due to the 3DS being on the way out. But we did see the wonderful PS4 version released late last year, and it was easily one of the best games of the last year and one of the best JRPGs of this generation. But now the Switch is getting its own version of Dragon Quest XI, Dragon Quest XI-S Echoes of the Elusive Age Definitive Edition, a mouthful of a title certainly, but this version is not just a port of last year's version, it's a virtually new game with hordes of new content. First off, let's start with the story. Dragon Quest XI follows a young lad who, when he was a baby, was separated from his parents after a terrifying attack on his hometown. Being raised by an old man, we later join the hero when he's a teenager, nearly grown up, and living a pretty normal life. Well, that was until, taking part in a tradition of climbing a mountain, Hero and his friend is attacked by a monster, only for Hero's hand to glow and defeat the monster. We later know that the hero is a special being called a luminary, and he has a destiny to fulfill. The story is your typical JRPG sort of setup, ticking all the boxes these sort of games have in their story. But that's not to say it's boring. Oh no, it's quite a lot of fun actually. Dragon Quest stories have always had sharp and funny writing, and the quaint regional British voice acting is always lovely. The story may play typical JRPG tropes, but it does have plenty of dark and funny moments, and is lifted even more by a brilliant cast of characters who join Hero on his quest. From the thief Eric, to the brilliant martial artist Jade, or to the incredibly flamboyant Servando, it's easily the best band of heroes the series has seen. On to the gameplay now, and if you played any of the other mainline Dragon Quest games before, then you'll have a pretty good idea on how it plays. You explore the world of Edria, which is a lush, beautiful landscape, which is honestly a beauty to behold. Whilst the game world is pretty darn big, it's not really an open world as some parts are still split off by loading screens. It just feels like your typical JRPG, which is great. You travel from place to place fighting enemies along the way in your traditional RPG fashion, and whilst that description may not sound a lot of fun, in motion it's an utter blast. Part of the joy of Dragon Quest XI is just exploring the world. The many towns and villages you find are full of people who just love to have a good natter or to offer you a side quest to do. That could see you exploring secret areas of the land, killing certain monsters, or of course fetch quests. But they never feel like a chore to do, and it's mostly due to how charming the game is that they're such a joy. As for the game's combat now, and for all the years Dragon Quest has been around, the combat hasn't changed much at all, and the combat here in 11 is pretty much the same. The phrase, if it ain't broke, don't fix it, really does suit this game to a T, and whilst the combat does play out in your typical JRPG fashion, with each character taking turns and leveling up in the same old way, there's been little tweaks and changes to the formula that's benefit the combat for both old and new. For instances like the pepped up state, which turns your character ridiculously powerful for a while, to an inclusion from Dragon Quest VIII Remake for the 3DS, where all the enemies are on the screen so there's no more random encounters, which is brilliant, and grinding isn't really much of a necessity now, as you should be well leveled up enough through normal play to tackle the big bosses in the game. When the PS4 version was released last year, it did feel like some critics didn't like that it played too similarly to the other titles. Personally, I don't think it matters, as the gameplay is so refined and so fun, it just works so well, and again, if it isn't broke, don't fix it. As for this being the Switch version, you're probably wondering what all the hype is about this version and what sets this apart from the originally released PS4 version last year. See, this version, being the definitive edition, includes a lot, and I mean a lot of new content. For starters, the 2D mode that was included in the Japanese only 3DS version that made the game look like an SNES game is here. The game is fully demade, if you'd like to call it that it makes it look like a game from the 90s, with new music, UI, and various other bits and pieces to make it feel like a whole new version of the game. You can swap between both of these styles at a church, and whilst it would have been nice if there was just an option in the menu, there's plenty of churches around, so you're always near one if you want to switch styles. And that's not it for all the new stuff. There's a collection of side quests that allow you to visit parts of the worlds from the previous 10 mainline Dragon Quest games, which is a lovely bit of fan service. There's also a collection of new character quests that are new event quests that follows the perspective of various team members. There's also a cool photo mode, which is a wonderful new addition to save memories of your adventure. There's also new rideable monsters, costumes, as well as a new harder difficulty mode. There's also a load of quality life improvements such as faster battle speeds, a skip cutscene button, quick command menu to even the ability to call your horse anywhere in the game. There's a lot of other small changes that I've noticed from the PS4 version, and it is without doubt the best version to get is the Switch version with all these new additions only for Switch and with no info suggesting it's ever coming to PS4. Lengthwise, Dragon Quest XI-S is an absolutely huge game. To complete the main story, you're looking at around good 70 to 75 hours probably, but with all this new stuff you could easily go into the triple digits, probably around 150 hours. There's a heck of a lot of content here, and if you want to replay the game in 2D mode, then you're talking well over 2 hours. There's a lot of content there on the small cartridge. On the audio side of things now, and Dragon Quest XI Switch is another huge improvement over the original version. See, the original PS4 version soundtrack had a MIDI soundtrack, which was pretty disappointing as it didn't show the soundtrack in the best light. Thankfully though, the Switch version has swapped out this old tired MIDI version for a full orchestrated soundtrack, which is fantastic and a huge improvement over the MIDI version, featuring much more punchier tunes. The Dragon Quest games are always a visual delight, and Dragon Quest XI is no different. On the PS4, it's an absolutely beautiful title filled with so many bright colours and wonderful areas. And the transition to Switch, we've seen a very faithful port here in terms of visuals. Yes, there is a graphical downgrade here, but thankfully it isn't really that noticeable. There is less foliage, textures, and a little bit less resolution and a little bit popping, but it's still an absolutely beautiful looking title and it runs really well. On the portable part of things, again, it's a great showcase to show off the recently released Switch Lite. Considering this is a game I was only playing last year on a powerful console, it's now in the palm of my hands. This is really seriously impressive stuff. Conclusion time now, and when Dragon Quest XI was released on the PS4 late last year, it was easily one of the best JRPGs of this generation, and with the release of the stupidly long title Dragon Quest XI-S Echoes of Elusive Age Definitive Edition, it takes the same brilliant title and adds a kitchen sink amount worth of new content. From the new 2D mode, orchestrated soundtrack, new quests and the various other new additions and quality of life improvements, this is well worth the double dip for previous players. It's easily one of the best looking titles on Switch and arguably one of the best ports on the system, so that's why I'm giving Dragon Quest XI-S Definitive Edition a 10 out of 10 with the title of Outstanding. Thank you for watching my review, like, rate and subscribe, and until next time, happy gaming. Bye.